Hello, blonde root, purple hair. Not the vibe, but I'm watching Harry Potter, so I figured it'd be a good time to read for you because I love you. And you told me to prove it earlier, and I feel as though this is a good way to prove it. So not every time you say prove it, I'm gonna say, I made you these videos, and you're not gonna be able to say, you haven't made me one in forever. This video is proof. Fuck you. Fuck you so much. Anywho's then, we're honestly like halfway through this book. And I would say I'm flying through, but like I am because I don't normally read this much of a book. Normally I switch to audiobooks. So, there is that. Cutesy. Okay. This one's called The Potion Master. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume you're not watching these because... Also, I just drank a seltzer water, my bad. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you are not watching watching, you're just listening. So, the book is going to be covering the camera, and you're literally only going to be able to see my chin and my neck, and a little bit of my collarbone. So, I guess I can change the angle. So, if you really want to watch me, but you don't... I hate it here. Okay. I'm not looking at myself, whatever. The Potions Master. 131 is where we're starting. How long is this chapter? Okay. I think we're gonna get through probably at least 2 chapters. Anyways. Okay. There, look. Where? Next to the tall kid with the red hair wearing the glasses. Did you see his face? Did you see his scar? Whispers followed Harry from the moment he left his dormitory the next day. People lining up outside his classroom stood on tiptoe to get a good look at him, or doubled back to pass him in the corridors again, staring. Harry wished they wouldn't because he was trying to concentrate on finding his way to class. There were 142 staircases at Hogwarts, wide, sweeping ones, narrow ones, rickety ones, some that led somewhere different on a Friday, some with a vanishing step halfway up that you had to remember to jump. Then there were the doors that wouldn't open unless you asked politely or tickled them in exactly the right place. The doors that weren't really doors at all, but a solid walls just pretending. It was also very hard to remember where anything was, because it all seemed to move around a lot. The people in portraits kept going to visit each other, and Harry was sure the coats of armor could walk. The ghosts didn't help either. It was always a nasty shock when one of them glided suddenly through a door you were trying to open. Nearly headless Nick was always happy to point new Gryffindors in the right direction, but Peeves and Poltergeists were worth worth 2 locked doors and a trick staircase if you met him when you were late for class. He would drop waste paper baskets on your head, pull rugs from under your feet, pelt you with with bits of chalk, or sneak up behind you, invisible, grab your nose and screech. Got your conk? Wild. Anyways. Even worse than Peeves, if that was possible, was the caretaker, Argus Filch. Harry and Ron managed to get on the wrong side of him on their very first morning. Filch found them trying to force their way through a door that unlikely turned out to be the entrance to the out-of-bounds corridors on the 3rd floor. He wouldn't believe they were lost, was sure they were trying to break in on purpose, and was threatening to lock them in the dungeons when they were rescued by Professor Quirrell, who was passing. Filch owned a cat called Miss Norris, a scrawny, dust-colored creature with bulging lamp-like eyes, just like Filch's. She paroled the corridors alone, break a rule in front of her, put just one toe out of line, and she'd whisk off for Filch, who'd appear wheezing 2 seconds later. Filch knew the secret passageways to the school better than anyone, except perhaps the Weasley twins, and could pop up as suddenly as any of the ghosts. The students all hated him, and it was the dearest ambition of many to give Miss Norris a good kick. And then, once you managed to find them, there were the classes themselves. They were there was a lot to magic, as Harry quickly found out, that waving your wand and saying a few funny words. Was a lot more to magic, as Harry quickly found out, than waving your wand and saying a few funny words. They had to study the night skies through the telescopes every Wednesday at midnight and learn the different names of the stars and the movements of the planets. 3 times a week, they went out to the greenhouse behind the castle to study herbology with a dumpy little witch called Professor Sprout, where they learned how to take care of strange plants and fungi and found out what they were used for. Easily the most boring class was History of Magic, which was the only one taught by a ghost. Professor Binns had been very old indeed when he had fallen asleep in front of the saffron fire and got up the next morning to teach, leaving his body behind. Binns droned on and on while they scribbled down names and dates and got Emmerich the Evil and Uric the Oddball mixed up. Emmerich the Evil and Uric the Bot. Oh my god. I forgot this book gives me an aneurysm to read. Emmerich the Evil and Uric the Oddball mixed up. Professor Filtwick, the charms teacher, was a tiny little wizard who had to stand on a pile of books to see over his desk. At the start of the first class, he took roll call, and when he reached Harry's name, he gave an excited squeak and toppled out of sight. Professor McGonagall was again different. Harry had been quite right to think she wasn't a teacher to cross. Strict and clever, she gave them a talking to the moment they sat down in her first class. Transfiguration is some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn here at Hogwarts. She said, anyone messing around in my class will leave and not come back. You've been warned. She changed her desk into a pig and back again. They were all very impressed and couldn't wait to get started, but soon realized they weren't going to be changing the furniture into animals for a long time. After taking a lot of complicated notes, they were each given a match and started trying to turn it into a needle. By the end of the lesson, only Hermione Granger had made any difference to her match. Professor McGonagall showed the class how it had gone all silver and pointy and gave Hermione a rare smile. The class everyone had really been looking forward to was Defense Against the Dark Arts, but Professor Quirrell's lessons turned out to be a bit of a joke. His classroom smelled strongly of garlic, which everyone said was to ward off a vampire he'd met in Romania, and was afraid would be coming back to get him one of these days. His turban, he told them, had been given to him by an African prince as a thank you for getting rid of a troublesome zombie. But they weren't sure they believed that story. For one thing, when Seamus Finnegan asked eagerly to hear how Quirrell had fought off the zombie, Quirrell went pink and started talking about the weather. For another, they had noticed that a funny smell hung around the turban, and the Weasley twins insisted that it was stuffed full of garlic as well, so that Quirrell was protected wherever he went. Harry was very relieved to find out that he wasn't miles behind everyone else. Lots of people had come from Muggle families and, like him, hadn't had any idea that they were witches and wizards. There was so much to learn. There was so much to learn that even people like Ron didn't have much of a head start. One second. I'm getting some seltzer water.